the Good Shepherd Auditorium in Inwood, New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome multimedia producer and culture and arts professional, Osaliki Sepulveda. Osaliki is on a mission to tell stories that instill and uplift Latino pride. In 2018, he founded the Collectives for Arts, Music, and Dance, a nonprofit cultural organization that provides authentic artistic performances and cultural programs that celebrate the humanity of Afro-Dominican and Latino traditions in the United States. Also, he serves as the artistic director for the Dominican Folkloric Squad, a performing arts ensemble that produces folkloric presentations for the stage and community spaces across New York City. We're going to talk to him about both groups and so much more. But first, let me welcome you, Osaliki, to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's great seeing you.
Thank you, Aaron, for bringing me here, inviting me to your show. I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you.
My pleasure. It's great to touch base with someone who is all about uptown hyperlocal programming.
Oh, yes.
So I find it very fascinating that your focus is on Afro-Dominican culture, being that it makes up a minority of the population of the DR, 15 to 25%, depending on which reports you look at these days. Who knows? But I think it's wonderful that you bring a voice to a niche audience, and it has a profound influence on the cultural heritage of the country. So can you share a bit about your process and how you explore the cultural relationships the DR has with its neighboring Caribbean countries and their connection with Africa and Europe through your work?
Okay, let's break down. First, I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, and I came to the United States when I was 16 years of age. Back then, I had no idea about what culture was, or being a Latino, or even being Dominican. In the Dominican society and in the Dominican Republic back then, we lived in a bubble where we just went to study the normal stuff that kids go study in school. If you ask what drums are, you would not find anyone who would explain to you what the drums is, what the rhythms of palos or gaga was, or how merengue came about to be our national music. So it's when I came to the United States that I found a dance group in an organization in Washington Heights that was providing these kinds of services. And that my curiosity back in the Dominican Republic, and it's sort of it's how do I. When I found that here in the United States, in the diaspora, I could find answers to those questions, to me was a shock.
It's funny you can find it here, but not there.
But not there, yes.
Why do you think that is?
Like I said, we lived in a bubble, in a denial of our roots and our ancestry in the Dominican Republic. And till this day, that's still a little, I don't want to mistake, but a little less than before, but still there. So the Dominican and the DR, let's say, Dominican Republic, the population is close to 75% dark skin, black people, and the rest is mixed, not even white, but it's mixed. Spanish, French, and all other ethnic groups that have migrated to the Dominican Republic. So. But hardly kids know these things. And I didn't know that either. It's when I come to the United States, specifically to Washington Heights, that I learned these things. So it really woke me up in that sense, and took me on a path of learning my culture, learning my music. I have always wanted to be an artist. I started as an actor and a dancer, and then I diverted to other stuff. So, and that's how I get to where I am today. And discover, and I continue to discover way more information. I continuously go to the Dominican Republic to do investigations and research about culture, about ancestry, about our music, and the origin of it all. And I come back always with new information. with new discoveries.
So this search, I think, is really important. It's like you're kind of getting exactly what I'm looking for. Is like it's an origin story of your love for what you do, and it has propelled you on. Is like you had to go outside of your culture to learn about your culture, and
Yes.
And then with that thirst and hunger for knowledge, discovering this culture, finding ways to propagate it and get it out there, right? And
Yes.
and to the little 15-year-old Osaliki who's still in the DR who wants to learn, you know what I mean, and bring it forward, right?
Yes, it's crazy that you have to migrate out of your native country to learn about your own country.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's safe to say, from your personal mission to entertain and instill Latino pride, it's informed the mission of the Collective for Arts, Music, and Dance and the programs it offers, right?
Yes, and that's how is, in a way, that's how it's born. It comes from I was part of a beautiful organization in Washington Heights that had these programs. I was a participant, then I became a staff. So that organization, and once I go independent, I went to do what I study in college, which was production. So I went to do that, but I had cultivated, incidentally, a group of young men and women born in the Dominican Republic and also born here, mixed up, who wanted to continue to learn just like I was. And that's how Collective for Arts, Music, and Dance is born. Out of that group of over 30 kids who wanted to learn, just like I wanted to learn.
Well,
Sorry.
It's okay. So the Collective Arts, Music, Dance program actually spans beyond the Afro-Dominican agenda to also include other Latino traditions, right?
It does, yes.
Yeah. So make sure everybody knows that. Is your focus predominantly focused on educating Latino population, or do you want to go beyond it into other cultures as well?
It's to educate and inform everyone who is interested in learning, not just Latinos.
Awesome.
It started that way because those kids wanted to learn.
Right.
But then along the way, I also discovered and learned that other people were interested in learning about Afro-Dominicans, Afro-Latinos, and Afro in general. Mm-hmm. So I say, why not?
Totally. Absolutely. Well, I think it's great that you're reaching all sectors. And one of your programs I'd like to highlight in the past was Señora Bachata,
yes,
which you did in 2021. Can you
That's
talk about
correct.
that project?
That project was also I was as someone who there's a little town. That's where it comes from. There's a little town in the Dominican Republic that I spent close to 3 years living there. It's called Sabana de la Mar. It's in the south. I think in the south part of the country. If you look at it in the map, you don't find it. So I lived next to a bar, and they used to play. That was late 80s, starting the 90s. Bachata was not a common genre still, not even in the Dominican Republic. Bachata came about from guards who wanted to go to police officers and guards. Every 15 and 30, when they get paid, they will go to these bars and play and dance and get with women and all that stuff. That's where bachata comes from. So the elite society in the Dominican Republic repudiated that. Mm-hmm. So, and informal musicians, they started playing baladas, boleros, Cuban stuff, and also some Puerto Rican stuff. And that whole merge became what is bachata. Bachata was a place. It was not a genre. And people started dancing and doing covers of boleros, Cuban boleros. Mm-hmm. And that's how bachata comes about. So the story of Señora Bachata tells the story of bachata since the 70s until now, but it also tells the story of the owner of the bar that I live next to.
So the bar is part of the character.
Yes.
It's the setting for the whole.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
That's where everything happens.
So I love it. I love it when real life informs art, right?
Yes, totally.
And now it's funny. I can possibly. So first off, is there any plans to bring it back in 2022?
I'm working on bringing it back. Now that I'm here, I'm regrouping with my team, and we plan on starting rehearsal now in July so that we can get it ready for either September or October.
Great.
We looking forward to that.
Yes. I'll tell you what, it's funny. You live in Washington Heights and Inwood. I know a lot of people in this neighborhood. It's really hard to find bachata bands and players. You would think they'd be everywhere. Because you hear it on the radio, right?
Yes.
You hear it people, but to actually get them played live, very few I find. Am I
Very
wrong
few.
in this or not?
No, you're not wrong. Very few.
Why is this? It's crazy.
The majority of artists who are in Washington Heights, they either play típico, which is a pre to merengue, and baladas, covers their own songs and stuff, but hardly anyone plays bachata.
I know.
And that is crazy. I know one person, and it's a female.
I know her too.
And she's not from Washington Heights, but she's in the Bronx.
I know her, yeah.
Not even in Washington Heights, but
Right.
she's the only one that I can think of
Exactly.
who is actually continues to do bachata.
See, the reason I bring it up because the first thing you said, it's like you had to leave the DR to learn more about it. And then the funny thing is, when you're here, it's like, okay, it's like if this is such a big part of your culture, where is it?
Where is it? I think that people still see it here just as a genre that they would enjoy
Yeah,
from other artists, but that they wouldn't do.
right.
I hope I'm not wrong in that.
Yeah.
But I've met artists who have started in bachata, but then they transition to balada.
Sure. And merengue is everywhere, it seems.
Merengue is everywhere.
Yeah.
You always find some merengue band in somewhere.
It's great wedding bands.
Yeah.
Actually. Well, I'm excited to hear about Senor Bachata. I think it's one of your best programs that you've done throughout all your work, and you do all great stuff too. And we're kind of segueing into the other work you do with
Thank you.
the Dominican Folklore Squad, and which you're artist director, as I mentioned. So, how does this group differentiate than the collective?
It was born out of the collectives.
Okay.
Because it was born because we needed to define what the collective was going to be and what the folkloric squad was going to be. So what we did is so that we can serve a more general population, we had to create the folkloric squad and keep it Dominican. Dominican arts, Dominican music, Dominican dances. And the collective serves a much broader.
So the squad's more of a for us by us thing, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. Very cool. But even though you're on a podcast, so you're reaching a much larger audience, I'm curious because I feel it's really, like you said before earlier, like the collective too, serving, like the stories transcend all nationalities and religions and shapes and sizes and age. Are there any particular important stories because to me, I always feel like art's the thing that pushes something to come to birth, right?
Yes.
So I'm just curious if there was any, it's kind of a two-part question for the Folklore Squad. Is there a particular story or series of stories that you felt you needed to tell, and specifically wanted to start targeting the Dominican population, using those stories and which way you wanted to tell them?
Perhaps the way we started. It's a good story in a way. Is that the question?
No, the stories what are the particular stories about Dominican heritage or Afro-Dominican heritage?
Okay.
That said, the collective can't tell it the way we want to tell it. We want to create this Dominican folkloric squad to be the vehicle to be able to tell these stories in a way we want to reach a Dominican audience.
Okay, so the Dominican Folkloric Squad works on specifically music and dances. So it is the collective that deals with what is storytelling in theaters, let's say.
So it's a branch of the collective then.
It's a branch of the collective.
I got it.
Yes.
Cool.
So we work on, for example, I have a percussion team. We work on that several days a week on music, on getting the gist, the traditions, the origins
Right.
of the music. We put that together and then we convert it, and then I train the dancers into that. But it's really more how the dance is danced in the original groups the regions of the different regions of the Dominican Republic,
Right.
and we project that here with this group.
That's fascinating. I think that's wonderful. That's why I wanted you to articulate, because I don't think people know that. Like, these are the specific groups. These are storytelling, like oral history in a way, but
Yeah.
Obviously focused on through music and dance to be told.
Yes, that's why in each presentation we must do an oral presentation of what we are projecting on stage, so that people can understand the exact nature of the music and the connection between the dancers and the music.
Do you have any particular region you're most fond of, where you're from, or somewhere else? Like,
I'm not from there, but I've lived there in the past few years. Where I go back to the artists where I go to is Villamella. Is I believe, in my opinion, is just my opinion, is based on my research too.
that's the only one that matters right now. So we don't want to talk.
Villamella is one of the richest places, culturally speaking, and in terms of history of our ancestry, especially our Afro-descendant ancestry that there is in the whole country. There are other places, yes, but Villamella is the hub where any artist, any researcher who wants to learn about it, about our culture, Villamella is the place.
You heard it here, folks. See, and thank you for saying all that, because, and the reason why I kind of did a deep dive in the whole folkloric thing is because I feel like part of this podcast is educational in a way. I feel like people, it's easy to listen to something or see a painting or something like that, but like to hear about people's work or where it comes from is a totally different thing. And what you're doing is it's specialized and also very universal. And I feel like the more people know about it, it demystifies it, and they can hear like, oh my God, that's where bachata came from, or that's where this is where this little tiny place in the DR where these many of these stories are rooted in there. I think that's very helpful and educational, and informative, and then people can experience culture through that.
Yes, and that's our intention. To bring, we do our studies, we do our research, we learn about that, and then we look for the best way possible to project it, and staying loyal and faithful to the roots of that culture, of that specific music or dance.
Right. So tell me, for the collective and the offshoot of the folkloric squad, what's next for you guys coming back this year, or next year for that matter? What do you have planned?
Well, this year we are, let's start with the summer. The summer we are planning a series of workshop/mini concerts in open spaces. We're doing that twice a week, starting in actually about 2 weeks. The last week in June would start. And that's going to be completely, because it is a series that's going to start with music from Villamella. We have other regions that we are also going to cover, but we're going to do, every week we're going to do a region. And we start with Villamella.
Great.
Which is los Congos. It's called Congos de Villamella, and Pri. These two particular dances, I would say, but it's also music. It's not just dance. From that are specifically from there. So what we are doing with that is teaching the audience, or informing the audience about those two particular cultural elements of Villamella. Where it comes from, how he came about, and what is he doing today, and the importance of those two elements in the country, and for the Dominican culture, and for the Dominican diaspora as well.
And how many of these regional concerts, we'll say, are you doing this summer?
I hope I could do as many as 10.
Great.
I hope.
Where are they happening? Sorry.
Where?
Yeah.
We do in different spots.
Okay.
We're still working on the logistics and permits and all that stuff for
Sure.
public
I
spaces.
hear you.
So you know how that works.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, 10, and so 10 different regions being highlighted then.
It could be 10. It could be less.
Okay. Less is fine too.
Yeah.
No problem with that. So that's awesome. And same for the folkloric squad?
Yes.
Perfect.
The folkloric squad is part of what Collective does.
Right.
They are the ones who assist me in doing research, in putting together programming, and we are a group. They are an amazing team of young people who are so invested in doing this type of work because they want to learn and also pass it on to other people who also want to become part of it and learn it.
So they're doing the R&D, they're doing the research and stuff like that. It's going to be part of the oral history that'll go into the presentations.
Yes.
Things like that. Fantastic. Well, I love how you got everything moving and shaking in there. So where can we send people find out more about these projects when you do have it all worked out? Where can we send them?
The best channel is social media, Instagram. We have an Instagram channel. It's called, I believe, C4AMD. It's what we stand for in the acronyms. So our website is also www.c4amd.org. We have all the programming in there too. We have our bios. We have the services we provide. The Dominican Folklore Squad is also there. We have a calendar of presentations and the services that also as the performing group provides. Mm-hmm. So everything is also in the website. So now the day-to-day stuff, Instagram.
There you go. So people, to get to know them more and what they do, please visit those places. For the day-to-day Instagram, for the more bigger picture on the calendar, head over to the website, okay? Very good. Well, Osaliki, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me, providing me this this venue, this channel, this your space to speak about the work that Collective for Arts, Music, and Dancing is doing and the work that my kids are doing. Because without the kids, there's no programming, and they are invested. They are fighters, and because they want this to continue and they want people to know about who they are and where they come from. Thank you so much for this.
You're very welcome, and that's why you're here. I want people to know about all the great work you and your kids are doing too. So hopefully people can listen and have a little more insight on what you do, and they can come go support your work.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So once again, folks, thanks to Osaliki for being here on this Artist Spotlight edition of Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment right now, please show us some love and rate us and review us positively, we hope, on Apple Podcasts. That really does help. Many thanks to Church of Good Shepherd here for hosting us, and to Hidesites.com for uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, live performances, pop-up galleries, and so much more. Inwood Artworks On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.